Today we are going to change the oil in the newer model Grand Cherokees. This one is a 2014 Grand Cherokee Overland Diesel, the EcoDiesel. For those that don't know, this motor basically came from Italy, if I'm not mistaken, the V Motori. The oil that you have to use in these new Chrysler diesel engines, there's only one company that makes it right now, and here are the motor oils. Originally, I'd say about, a little over about a year ago, you could find this, and I had to order from Amazon because none of the local auto parts stores carries this yet. This used to be the Pennzoil Ultra Euro L, and the class you're looking for is that Chrysler MS 11106. Low ash formula, especially formulated for European vehicles. To be honest, the cost of changing the oil at the dealership isn't that much more than ordering your own oil, getting your own oil filter. I kind of like doing my own oil changes because it gives me a visual inspection of what's going on with the motor itself. You know, what's coming down the pipeline, or is this boot cracked, or where's this leak coming from? So I like doing it myself. Overall, I think I'm only saving $5 per oil change. The oil filters, even on Amazon, they're around 50 bucks. So the oil filter themselves are not cheap. As far as the part number, that's the Mopar part number, Mopar 682294002AA. For those that are not familiar with it, is a cartridge style filter. So very European in that fact, or in that matter. Personally, I recommend staying with the Mopar filters. I don't think Wix even makes them right now as a replacement. Wix is my second choice to go to. This diesel motor is fairly new in the Grand Cherokees. I don't want to do anything where Chrysler can come back and say, hey, you voided your warranty because you didn't use a Mopar part or you didn't use the right oil. So having said that, this oil is no longer available. Pennzoil reformulated it into this one, which is now just a Platinum Euro L, full synthetic, made from natural gas. They crossed it, so now it's Dexos approved as well. And if you look at the back, it still has a Chrysler MS 11106 certification or specification. I also have to look at my notes from the last oil change. If I'm not mistaken, it takes either 6.5 or 7 quarts of oil, maybe even 7.5. So the cases of oil are sold by 6 on Amazon. So naturally, the very first time you do it, you'll end up buying 2 cases. And then next time you change your oil, you'll buy 1 case because you'll have leftover oil from the last time. And of course, the case of oil itself is, I can't remember, 40 or 50 bucks. So it's not cheap. It's one of the things I didn't really fully research before I bought the vehicle, but we needed something that can carry a lot of cargo, still gets 30 miles to a gallon, and can go off-road and camping and all that good stuff too. Plus it's a Jeep, and I'm a Jeep guy. All right, so as far as changing the oil go, the first thing you have to do is take off the engine cover. This is very firmly on both sides. Pull straight up. Don't do twisting or anything. Just pull straight up. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 contact points. All right, once you got your engine cover off, the next thing you're going to have to do is loosen these 2 hose clamps. This one here and this one here. Reason why is we're going to actually pull this out, and this section of tube is going to come out. Right down here, I don't know if you can see it. Down there, that's the canister for the oil filter. So it is on top, not on the bottom. So to get to that, we have to remove this section of tube. The air box can actually stay here. We're only going to remove this midsection here. Strongly advised when you remove this section, put a shop towel, a clean shop towel, into this intake tube just to make sure no debris or tool falls in there, because that would not be fun to fish out. And if you do drop something in there, do not start the engine until you get it back out. So next step is going to remove this tube. All right, so I removed this midsection of tube and put a clean shop towel or rag in there, just loosely, don't stuff it down too far. Next thing we're going to do is we have to undo this tube here, but just from the front piece. And it's basically a press clamp. So you're going to squeeze where you're supposed to squeeze. From mine, it's the top and bottom. You squeeze and gently wiggle this out. Once this comes out, you just kind of pull this over here, and I'll show you once I get it out. Actually, I remember better. It's gently just pull on the hose itself. It'll come off. There may be some residual oil in there, so I got a little paper towel and just kind of stuff it in there to keep it from dripping all over the place. And what we'll do is I'm going to just bring this back over here and keep it out of the way. I'm going to zip tie it back. Next up, you're going to need a 1 1/16 socket to get the cap off. But of course, before you take the cap off, we have to go drain the oil. And for that, the drain bolt is a 13mm socket. So I'm going to crawl into the Jeep, be kind of hard to show you sideways, but it's right over there. And this is from the front of the Jeep looking back. It's a little cutout behind the skid plate here. So pretty much between the two front tires, so whether you get it from the front or get it from behind, it's up to you. Also, since it's the Overland, I've got the quadrilift system, so I put it on off-road 2, which gives me just enough height to crawl into the Jeep. And because it is based on a computer, I put jack stands under it just in case it decides to deflate. Safety first. Alright, let's go drain the oil. Alright, so this is the filter pulled out, and again, there's going to be a whole lot of oil coming out of it. Alright, so it comes out this way, basically turn counterclockwise, pull it out, the filter will come out with the cap. With the new filter, you're going to get two O-rings. You have this large one, alright, that large one replaces the one here on the cap. And then the smaller one is already pre-inserted. And of course, to make installation easier later, you're going to want to use clean the Euro L oil as lubrication to make sure it goes in without the O-ring catching on anything or breaking. So this part's the messy part. Is you have to grab a firm hold of this and basically pull it right out. If you look at the new filter, it is pressure fit. So just basically clipped on, so you just got to pull hard enough to get it out. And like I said, this is the messy part. And that is the used filter after about, I think I have 8,400 miles. Oh, I'm sorry, 8,600 miles in this last oil change. I'm down to like 7% oil life left. My oil minder has not come on yet, but that's good enough. We are about to take a road trip, so might as well get it changed. And it's pretty dirty. I think the longest the service interval should be is 10,000 miles with these vehicles. So even though the oil costs a lot of money and the filters cost as much as well, you change them basically instead of every 5,000 miles, you're changing it every 10,000 miles. But again, 10,000 is the max. The longest we got was 9,100 miles, which is when we first got it. Then the oil minder came on. I think it came on about 5% left. So this next step, we're going to clean all this out, take off the old O-ring, and then we're going to replace it with the new one. Alright, so took the cap off, cleaned it up, I swapped out the O-ring. I just got to dab my finger in there to get a little bit of oil, lubricated it. I know I said clean earlier, but you know what, it's fine. It's convenient this way. Next up, we need to insert the new filter cartridge into the cap. So you basically put it in, get a firm grip, and you're going to slowly pop it in place just like that till it clicks. So now it's in, and now we're going to go put it back in the Jeep. Now one thing to keep note is if you just recently driven your Grand Cherokee, you'll have to check the cavity where this goes into. If it's more than half full, actually more than a quarter full, you're going to have to pump some of that oil out. Otherwise, when you put this filter in there, it's going to push all that old oil out, and you're going to have a huge mess to clean up with. So what I use is an attachment from my Mighty Bleed or Mighty Pump brake bleeder hand pump. Creates a vacuum and is able to suck some of the old oil out. So I'm going to go check that real quick. So I'm not sure if you can see, but there was oil in there. It was about a quarter full, so I went in and got my hand pump and siphoned the rest of it out. So you can see the actual bottom of it. So now it's time to put the cap back on. And again, don't forget to lightly lubricate that O-ring. And you'll just bring it in here. Align it right, and you can basically just screw it in. Now on this, you do not torque this down tight at all. In fact, I think it's 25 inch-pounds or something like that. It's a ridiculously light number. Basically what I did last time was I hand tightened as much as I could, and then I just basically gave it like a 1/8 of a turn, not even probably, maybe even 1/16 of a turn of the ratchet, just to snug it down. It's got O-rings, it's not going to leak, so do not over tighten that because you'll crack the cap, and then you have to go to the dealer to buy another one because you're not going to find that at a parts store. Alright, the cap is on, and what I did to torque it down was I did it by hand. Of course it gets hard after a while, so I used a ratchet to kind of get it down to where it made contact. Once it made contact, I did it to where very lightly it stopped turning, and then just gave it a good little tug and called it quit. Again, do not over tighten that. It had to be really loose. Well, not really loose. It had to be loose for it to leak. If it's snug down, that's all you need. It's got two O-rings, O-ring on the outside. It shouldn't leak. Of course, after you run it for a day, check it. If it's leaking, then you know it's a little too loose. Or invest in a smaller torque wrench. Unfortunately, mine starts at 20 foot-pounds, and of course that'd be way too much for this. So I'm just doing it by hand, just like I did last time. At this point, I'm gonna crawl back under the Jeep, plug up the drain plug, clean it up a little bit, put all this assembly back together, and then put 7.5 quarts of oil back in. So I reinstalled the breather tube, make sure I pulled the little paper towel out, reinstalled this section of tube, make sure I pulled the towel out of there, clamp down the C-clamps. I'm about to go under the Jeep to plug up the drain plug and or the drain bolt, clean that area up, and then, like I said earlier, 7.5 quarts of Euro L. So at this point, I put 7.5 quarts of oil to begin with. If I remember last time, it took about just over 7.5 quarts, but I just did 7.5 for now. Start the Jeep, let it run for like 5 minutes or so, let it warm up. Turn it off, let it sit for another 5 minutes, and then we'll check the oil dipstick reading to make sure it's good. Usually at this point, I kind of leave the engine cover off. That way I can still visually inspect my oil filter cap, make sure there's no leak on there. If I have to add more oil, it's easier to add here and not get oil all over the engine cover. And then once everything's all checked out, we'll put the engine cover back on, and then we're good to go. So, oh, and then to reset the oil minder on the Jeep, the procedure is to not to start the Jeep, so don't put your foot on the brake. Hit the start button to bring it to, hit it twice to bring it to the on position. You'll depress the gas pedal all the way down 3 times within 5 seconds, and then you hit the start button again to turn the vehicle, to turn it off. And then the next time you start it, the oil minder should have been reset to 100%. All right, thanks for watching.